For decades, a possession so personal lay locked away in deep secrecy, shielded by a review so classified that even senior royals were kept entirely in the dark, leading to a decision that permanently shifted the emotional axis of the entire Windsor family. Catherine never asked or campaigned for this hidden burden, yet when the historic moment finally arrived, the choice was made deliberately and quietly. What is this mysterious possession? Why was it withheld for so long? And what monumental change does it signal now that it belongs to the woman destined to be queen? The possession that could not be discarded. There are things money cannot buy. A ring can be appraised, a tiara can be insured, a wardrobe can be cataloged and auctioned off to the highest bidder. But some possessions carry something else entirely. Something that has nothing to do with carats, provenance, or market value. They carry a person and their private world, the version of them that the public never saw. That is what made Diana's estate so complicated. Everyone knew about the jewels. The Spencer tiara was worn on her wedding day. They knew about the sapphire engagement ring that would later find its way onto Catherine's finger, and the dresses that sold for staggering sums at auction. Those were the visible pieces, the ones the world felt entitled to have an opinion about. But Diana left behind more than what was photographed. She left behind a private life, and parts of that private life were carefully set aside after her death, not distributed or auctioned. It was not gifted in the first wave of grief, simply held as though the people responsible for her estate understood that some things needed time before they could be passed on without causing damage. That decision was deliberate. In the weeks and months following Diana's death in August 1997, the process of handling her estate fell to a small circle of people. Her mother, Frances Shand Kidd, was among them. Her two sisters, Lady Sarah McCorquodale and Lady Jane Fellows, played significant roles. Together, they worked through the enormous task of deciding what happened to everything Diana had left behind. It was not a clean process. How could it be?
The funeral procession marches on, with Prince Charles, Prince Harry, Charles Spencer, Di's brother, Prince William.
This was not just a woman who had died young. Her demise was the most photographed, most written about, and most fiercely debated of her generation. Every item she had owned carried the weight of that. Every decision about where those items went would be scrutinized, questioned, pulled apart by a public that had never quite accepted that it had no rightful claim to her. William and Harry were teenagers when their mother died, 15 and 12, too young to be handed the full responsibility of her legacy, old enough to feel the loss in ways that would take years to fully surface. The decision was made early on to preserve certain items specifically for them, to hold things in trust, and to wait until they were old enough to understand what they were receiving and why. Some of those items were straightforward. Personal mementos, photographs, letters, things that belonged naturally to her sons because they had been part of their shared life with her. But other items were different. There was one possession in particular that did not fit neatly into any category. It was not a piece of jewelry in the traditional sense, nor was it a formal royal item with a clear line of succession attached. It was something more personal than that, something Diana had kept close, something that spoke not to her public role, but to who she was when the cameras were gone and the engagements were over, and she was simply herself. The people handling her estate recognized almost immediately that this particular item could not be distributed in haste. It required thought, careful thought, the kind that takes years rather than weeks, and so it was set aside. This is the part of Diana's story that rarely gets told. The public narrative tends to move quickly from her death to the aftermath. The funeral, the flowers outside Kensington Palace, the grief that swept across Britain and beyond. But inside the estate process, things moved far more slowly. Certain decisions were deferred again and again, not out of negligence, but out of an acute awareness that some choices, made too soon, could cause harm that would be very difficult to undo. The relationship between William and Harry added its own layer of complexity. As the brothers grew older and eventually became adults, the question of Diana's belongings became quietly contentious. Not in a way that immediately spilled into the press, but in a way that those close to the family were aware of. There were items both brothers felt a connection to, items where the emotional claim was not straightforward, where love for the same mother created tension rather than unity. This is documented. It is not speculation. In his memoir, Harry wrote about conversations with William regarding their mother's possessions. He described specific disagreements, moments where what seemed like a practical discussion about objects became something far more charged, because the objects were never really just objects. They were proxies for grief and loyalty, for who loved her more and who was honoring her correctly. That is the emotional landscape into which this particular possession sat. For years it stayed where it had been placed, out of public view, away from the arguments, preserved in a way that protected it from becoming a flashpoint. And then something changed. A review was initiated. Quiet, private, kept well away from the press. The kind of process that happens inside institutions like the royal family, when a decision has been deferred long enough and the moment finally arrives to act. The outcome of that review led directly to Catherine, not to a museum or an auction house. It was not to a charity connected to Diana's memory. To Catherine, specifically, deliberately. Which raises the question that sits at the center of this entire story. What is this possession? Why did it require a formal review before it could be handed over? And what does it mean that the woman who will one day be Queen of England is now the one who holds it? Those answers begin with the review itself. Who was in the room, with what was decided, and with why the whole thing was kept so carefully hidden from the outside world. The secret review, who was involved, and why it was hidden. Nothing about this was announced. There was no press release or palace statement, no carefully worded confirmation from Kensington Palace or Buckingham Palace, or anywhere else. The review happened the way the most consequential royal decisions always happen. Behind closed doors, in rooms that the public never gets access to, between people whose names rarely appear in headlines. That is precisely what made it significant. Inside the royal family, secrecy is not unusual. Discretion is practically a job requirement. But there is a difference between routine privacy and the kind of deliberate concealment that surrounds something genuinely sensitive. This review fell into the second category. The people involved understood what was at stake, not just for Catherine, for the institution itself. So who was in the room? Senior royal household advisors played a central role. These are not elected officials. They are not publicly accountable figures. They are career professionals whose entire purpose is to manage the monarchy's interests quietly and effectively. People who understand that a wrong move involving Diana's memory does not just generate bad press. It reopens wounds that have never fully closed, and hands ammunition to people already looking for reasons to question the family's integrity. Legal representatives connected to Diana's estate were also involved. Her estate has never been entirely straightforward to manage. The trust established for William and Harry, the ongoing responsibilities tied to her charitable legacy, and the questions around items that carry both personal and historical significance. All of that requires legal oversight, and any decision to transfer possession of this nature would need to be handled correctly, documented, cleared, made watertight against any future challenge. That last point matters more than it might seem, because there was always the possibility of a challenge. There still is. The fractured relationship between William and Harry did not dissolve quietly. It hardened. It became public, and Harry's departure from royal life did not mean his connection to his mother's legacy simply evaporated. Whatever was decided in this review had to be decided in a way that could withstand scrutiny, including scrutiny from that direction. Whether Harry was consulted is the question everyone will ask. The honest answer is that it is unclear. What is clear is the pattern that has developed over recent years. Major decisions inside the working royal family are increasingly made without Harry's direct involvement. That is not an accident. It reflects the reality of where things stand. Harry stepped back from royal duties. He relocated to California and gave interviews. He wrote a book. Each of those choices carried consequences that extended beyond the headlines they generated. One of those consequences was this: the inner circle shrank, and Harry is no longer inside it. If he was informed of the review at all, it was almost certainly after the decision had already been made, not as a participant, as a courtesy, and possibly not even that. Sources close to the family have consistently indicated that communication between the brothers remains minimal, functional at best. A notification of this kind would depend entirely on whether William felt it was necessary. There is reason to believe he did not. Now consider the position of King Charles. This is where the story becomes genuinely complicated. Charles is Diana's former husband. The marriage was a public disaster. The breakdown was documented in extraordinary detail. The pain it caused on both sides was real and well recorded. And yet Charles is also the king, the head of this institution, the father of the man who is now married to the woman who received this possession. His role in the review was likely one of quiet facilitation rather than direct control. Charles has spent years carefully managing his relationship with Diana's memory. The early hostility between his supporters and hers has gradually given way to something more considered. He has made gestures, acknowledged her legacy in measured ways, ensured her sons had access to what was theirs. Whether that came from genuine feeling or institutional calculation is a question only he can answer. But facilitating this transfer served his interests. A smooth handover of Diana's most personal possession to Catherine strengthens the narrative Charles needs. It signals continuity, and it places Diana's legacy firmly inside the future of the monarchy rather than outside it. It says, quietly but unmistakably, that this family has found a way to carry her forward with dignity. That is a powerful message, particularly now. The timing of this review was not random. It did not happen in isolation. It happened against a specific backdrop. Catherine's cancer diagnosis and her subsequent recovery changed something. It changed something about how the royal family and the public understand her place in this story. There is a before and after to that period. Before, Catherine was admired, respected, valued. After, something deeper settled in, a recognition of her strength. A collective exhale of relief when she returned to public life. That shift did not go unnoticed inside the palace. The people who manage these decisions are acutely aware of public feeling. They understand symbolism, and they know that the right gesture at the right moment can do more for the monarchy's standing, more than a dozen carefully planned engagements. And they understood that Catherine, having come through what she came through, had earned something, not as a reward. That framing would be too transactional, as a recognition. The review concluded that the moment had arrived, that the possession had been held long enough, and the right person was now in a position to receive it in a way that honored what it represented. The decision was made, the transfer was arranged, and the secrecy around it was maintained not to hide something shameful, but to protect something genuine. Because the moment something like this becomes a press event, it stops being personal. It becomes a production, a managed piece of royal theater, and this was not meant to be that. It was meant to be private. A passing of something from one chapter of this family's story to the next, done quietly and with care, done in a way Diana herself might have recognized. Whether it achieved that is another question entirely. What it achieved publicly, once word began to filter out, was something the palace had not entirely anticipated. It did not just generate warmth. It generated questions about what the possession actually was, about what the review had really been about whether this quiet transfer was as straightforward as it appeared, and about what it revealed regarding the woman now trusted to carry it. Catherine and Diana, the invisible thread. She never got to meet her. That is the fact that sits beneath everything else in this story. Catherine never stood in the same room as Diana. She never had a conversation with her, and never received advice from her directly. She never got to ask the questions she might have wanted to ask about what this life actually feels like from the inside. Diana died in August 1997. Catherine and William did not begin dating until 2001, 4 years apart. A gap that cannot be closed no matter how much time passes, or how many of Diana's possessions find their way into Catherine's hands. And yet, The connection between these two women is one of the most discussed, most written about, and most emotionally charged relationships in the entire history of the British monarchy. A relationship between a woman who is gone and a woman who is still here. That is nothing. It is actually everything. From the very beginning of her public life, Catherine was measured against Diana. Not always fairly or kindly. The comparison started early and never fully stopped. The way she dressed. People compared the way she spoke to people at engagements. The way she handled the pressure of constant public attention. Every gesture was filtered through the question of whether it matched, echoed, or fell short of the woman who came before her. Catherine never appeared to resent that, which itself says something significant. A lesser person might have pushed back. He might have worked harder to establish a completely separate identity, and might have bristled at the constant invocation of someone she never knew. Instead, Catherine leaned into the connection, not in a performative way, not in a way that felt calculated, but in a way that suggested genuine respect for a legacy she understood she had inherited, whether she chose it or not. The engagement ring made that inheritance visible to the entire world. When William proposed in Kenya in October 2010, he did so with Diana's sapphire and diamond ring. The ring his mother had worn through the most photographed and painful years of her marriage. The ring Harry had initially taken after Diana's death. He felt it was the right thing to do. The ring William later asked for because he wanted to give it to the woman he intended to spend his life with. That transfer alone carried enormous weight, but the ring was always a public symbol. It was seen the moment Catherine stepped in front of the cameras at their engagement announcement. It has been photographed thousands of times since. It belongs to the public narrative as much as it belongs to Catherine personally. What Diana's most personal possession represents is something different. It belongs to the private story, the one that does not get photographed, the one that happens in quiet rooms, away from press lines and official engagements, the one about who Catherine is when the duties are finished and the doors are closed. She is simply a woman exploring an extraordinary and often isolating life. William has always been the bridge. He is the only living person who can tell Catherine what his mother was actually like, not the Diana of newspaper archives and documentary footage, the real one. The woman who made breakfast, told jokes, and sometimes got things wrong. She was that woman who loved her boys in a way that was uncomplicated, fierce, and completely her own. William has shared that version of his mother with Catherine. Not everything. Some things belong only to him, but enough. Enough for Catherine to understand the shape of who Diana was beyond the mythology. And enough to feel something genuine when she honors that memory. Rather than simply performing a connection for public consumption, that distinction matters enormously. The people who watched Catherine closely during her cancer diagnosis and recovery noticed something. There was a particular quality to how she handled it, a stillness, a refusal to catastrophize publicly while clearly processing something enormous privately, a determination to return to her family and her work without making the illness the permanent center of her identity. Those who knew Diana well noted the echo. Diana also understood the gap between public composure and private pain better than almost anyone. She lived inside that gap for years, maintained appearances while her marriage collapsed, smiled through engagements while struggling in ways the public would not learn about until much later. The difference between performing strength and actually building it was something Diana grappled with throughout her adult life. Catherine appears to have built it. That is not a small thing. It is arguably the most important quality a future queen can possess. And the timing of this possession being passed to Catherine, coming as it did after her illness and recovery, suggests that the people responsible for the decision understood that. They were not giving it to the polished public figure. They were giving it to the woman who had just been tested in the most personal way imaginable, and had come through it with her dignity and her sense of purpose intact. Diana would have understood that. There is something else worth considering. Catherine has 3 children who will grow up knowing almost nothing about their grandmother from personal memory. George was not yet born when Diana died. Charlotte and Louis arrived years later. What they know of Diana comes from photographs, family stories, and the way their parents speak about her in private moments. Having this possession inside their home changes something about that. It is not abstract anymore. It is present and tangible. It is a thread connecting them to a woman they never met, but whose choices and whose life shaped the family they were born into. Diana could not choose Catherine. She could not vet her or advise William on his choice, or sit across from her over a cup of tea. It was hard to decide whether this was the right woman for her son and for the role that came with him. That chance was taken away in a Paris tunnel before any of it was possible. But the people who love Diana and have spent years protecting her legacy made a choice. They looked at the woman William married. They watched how she carried herself through years of scrutiny, through the pressure of royal life, through public criticism, private difficulty, and a health scare serious enough to force a complete reassessment of everything. And they decided she was the right person, not because of her title, or because of her position in the line of succession, but because of who she has shown herself to be when things became genuinely hard. That is the invisible thread, not the sapphire ring or shared public role, not the photographs where people point out a similarity in a smile or a tilt of the head. The thread is a character, and the passing of this possession is the clearest signal yet that Diana's legacy is no longer in the hands of grief, conflict, or competing claims. It is in safe hands. The question now is what this moment means beyond Catherine herself, beyond the private significance of one woman receiving something that belonged to another. Because this transfer did not happen in isolation. It happened inside a monarchy that is actively reshaping itself, positioning itself for a future that looks very different from its recent past. And Diana's most personal possession is now part of that repositioning. What this moment means for the future of the monarchy. Pull back from the personal for a moment, because this story is not only about Catherine, it is not only about Diana, it is about something larger than both of them. Something that has been quietly building inside the British monarchy for several years now, a deliberate, carefully managed repositioning. A decision about what this institution wants to look like as it moves deeper into the 21st century. And Diana's most personal possession just became part of that architecture. The monarchy has always understood the power of symbols. It was built on them. Crowns and scepters and ceremonies that stretch back centuries. Objects that carry meaning beyond their physical form. Rituals that communicate something to the public about continuity, legitimacy, and the story the institution is telling about itself. This transfer is a symbol, not in a cold or calculated sense. The personal significance to Catherine is genuine. The emotional weight behind the decision is real. But inside an institution that thinks in generations rather than news cycles, nothing of this nature happens without a broader purpose being served. The broader purpose here is clarity. The royal family has spent the better part of 5 years exploring a level of internal conflict that would have destabilized a less resilient institution. The departure of Harry and Meghan, the interviews, the memoir, the sustained public criticism from a duke and duchess who chose visibility over silence and grievance over reconciliation. All of that created noise, confusion, a genuine question in the minds of many people about where the heart of this family actually was. This transfer answers that question, not loudly or defensively, simply by happening. By placing Diana's most personal possession in Catherine's hands, the institution is making a statement about lineage, legitimacy, and the future of this story. It is saying, without saying it directly, that the line runs through William and Catherine, through their children, through the work they are doing, and the values they are visibly committed to. Harry is not part of that statement. That absence is meaningful, not cruel, and not intended as a public wound, simply reflective of choices that were made and consequences that followed. The institution has moved forward, the center of gravity has shifted, and this quiet transfer is one of the clearest markers yet of exactly where that center now sits. Consider what King Charles has built since ascending to the throne. A slimmed-down monarchy, fewer working royals, a tighter inner circle, a deliberate focus on the next generation as the visible future of the institution. William and Catherine have become central to that project in a way that goes beyond their titles. They represent something the monarchy needs urgently right now. Relatability without informality, stability without rigidity. A sense that this family understands the world it operates in without abandoning the values that give it meaning. Diana understood that balance, too. She understood it instinctively, in a way the institution around her struggled to accommodate at the time. Her ability to connect with ordinary people and sit with them in their pain was not a PR strategy. It was simply who she was, and it terrified the people who preferred their royals at a careful and managed distance. The monarchy learned from that. Eventually, what Catherine has done, quietly and consistently over more than a decade of public life, is to demonstrate something. She revealed the same capacity for genuine connection without the institutional friction that surrounded Diana. The difference is partly temperament, partly timing, partly the fact that the institution itself has changed enough to accommodate a woman who brings warmth and accessibility to the role, rather than viewing those qualities as problems to be managed. The possession passing to Catherine is an acknowledgement of that evolution. It is the family saying, in the only language that truly matters inside these circles, Catherine embodies what Diana represented at her best, not the tragedy or the conflict. The part of Diana that made people feel the monarchy was something more than ceremony and protocol, the part that made it feel human. Now think about the children. George is 11 years old, Charlotte is 9, Louis is 6. They are growing up inside one of the most scrutinized households on the planet, with a level of normality that their parents have fought hard to protect. School runs, packed lunches, and Saturday mornings that look as much like ordinary family life as their circumstances allow. They also grow up knowing who their grandmother was, not from documentaries or from newspaper archives that frame Diana through the lens of her most painful years, from their parents, and from the stories told at home, from the objects that surround them. From the growing understanding that the woman in those photographs was not just a historical figure, but a real person whose love for their father shaped everything that came after. Having Diana's most personal possession inside their home makes that real in a way nothing else quite can. It is not a museum piece behind glass. It is not a relic preserved at a careful distance. It is present. It is part of their daily world. And as they grow older and begin to understand the full weight of what it represents, it will mean something specific to each of them. For George, especially, the significance will deepen with time. He will one day be king. He will carry the full weight of this institution on his shoulders, in a way his siblings will not. And he will do that knowing that his mother held something of his grandmother's, that the line connecting Diana to the monarchy's future did not break, that it ran through his parents and arrived, intact, at him. That is a profound thing to grow up knowing. The public reaction to news of this transfer has been telling. Diana's hold on the collective imagination has not weakened with time. If anything, the years since her death have allowed a more complete picture of her to emerge. The early grief eventually gave way to a more considered appreciation of what she actually represented, what she fought for inside, an institution that was not built to accommodate someone like her, what it cost her, what she gave anyway. People who grew up watching Diana are now in their 40s and 50s. They have children of their own. They have lived enough life to understand her story in ways they could not, especially when they were teenagers, standing outside the palace gates, holding flowers in the dark. When those people hear that something deeply personal of Diana's has been passed to Catherine, they feel something. Not just sentiment, something more specific. A sense that the story has not ended badly after all. That the chaos, pain, and the years of conflict have not swallowed Diana's legacy whole. That something genuine survived. That it found its way to someone worthy of it. That feeling is not incidental to the monarchy's interests. It is central to them. An institution that can make people feel that way without manipulation and theater. But simply by making a quiet and considered decision at the right moment, it is an institution that understands its own power. The British monarchy has survived centuries of upheaval by knowing when to hold and when to let go. When to assert tradition and when to evolve quietly without announcing the evolution. This transfer fits that pattern perfectly. It is not a grand gesture. It is a small, private, carefully considered act that carries enormous weight precisely because it was not performed for an audience. Diana spent much of her royal life fighting to be seen as a person rather than a symbol. The great irony is that she became the most powerful symbol the modern monarchy has ever produced. Her image, her compassion, her willingness to show vulnerability in a family that treated vulnerability as weakness. All of that now lives, in some measure, in Catherine. Not as a burden, or as an impossible standard to meet, as a foundation, something to build on rather than be crushed by. Something that says, this is what this family can be at its best. This is what it looks like when the institution and the individual find a way to work together rather than destroy each other. The possession has been passed. The thread holds. And the monarchy moves forward, carrying something it nearly lost. The understanding that its greatest strength has never been its pageantry, or its palaces, or its centuries of accumulated protocol. It has always been its humanity. Diana knew that. Catherine knows it too. Diana's most personal possession has found its home, not in a vault or a museum, in the hands of the woman who will one day be queen. That means something. For this family and the institution, for everyone who ever believed Diana's story deserved a better ending. What do you think the possession is? Drop your answer in the comments below. And if this story moved you, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Subscribe for more.